Okay, welcome to Safe Passages. I'm Tara Jabari, and on this episode, I have Kate here with me. Kate is a friend since high school, but Safe Passages is about travel tips, but also about digital wellness because I studied a lot about how we can use technology and digital media as a tool, but not as an addiction. And so I studied and I had an interview with my professor where I was a research assistant on new theories on how we develop with our presence and budget our presence because we have been able to be in contact with so many different ways, or the way that we can be in contact with people on the other side of the planet within seconds because of FaceTime or Skype or whatever it is. But then there are other bad parts to it, the immediate gratification and the immediate need for information and stuff like that. So, but what is unique is, Kate, you have two kids, and one of them, when was he 11 or 12?
He was 11. He just turned 12.
I don't like it. So when he was 11, he had done something, and so you and your husband decided as a punishment, there's no screen time, like no movies, no video games, nothing. And you actually held on to it for months. And most people say that they will do this, but very rarely do they actually follow through. And then while you were doing this, there had been a new book out called The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. I'm not entirely sure if I'm saying his name correctly, but it's spelled Haidt. And I was reading it and I was sharing with you that there was quite a few things, basically because the kids' generation, those who are kids now, are considered really anxious, or our anxiety overall have gone up because of technology. And so he offers solutions. And one of them is to downgrade like screen time. So I was asking about, like, have you noticed your kids having less anxiety or things like that? And then you had really cool insights and things. So when I started this podcast and I said, like, kind of asking people about this stuff, and I said, well, would it be interesting to hear it from an actual parent who actually followed through and kept the screen at a bare minimum with their kids? And they were like, yes, that is of interest. From parents, from people in general, from academics, from all sorts of stuff. So that's why I asked you to come, and you've been kind enough to come. And I am more in the cautious zone of not sharing too much, especially about minors. So we don't necessarily have to go by his name or your kids' names, or at least not their full names, like a nickname if you want, whichever you're comfortable with.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my son. We can call him my son.
Okay, your son.
He, as you said, had done something that required a consequence. So at that time, he was really big into playing Bed Wars on Roblox. And so that's all he wanted to talk about. That's all him and his friends talked about. That was really the center of conversation. And I already had a concern about that leading up to this consequence that he needed to have. And this was a great opportunity for us to kind of kill two birds with one stone, to give him a consequence, and then also hopefully to break away from that addiction that he had developed. So originally the punishment was supposed to be for just 5 months. I say just, but it extended later on. So he was going to get punished at the beginning of August. So we told him you cannot have any screen time or any gaming until the end of the year. So that would have been 5 months for him. And for the first 3 weeks, it was like you can't even be in the same room with somebody watching TV. So he couldn't be around it. He couldn't do it himself. So there was this one instance when he was playing outside with his friends, and me and my husband and daughter, we decided to watch a movie together. Well, he had to come back inside because his friends took out devices and started playing video games, and he knew he couldn't do that. So he came home and the rest of the family is watching TV. So he just, of course, he wasn't happy. He went to bed at 7 o'clock because he's like, I don't know what to do. Everybody's just watching TV. But it was a very good learning opportunity and experience for him, figuring out what to do. I do believe that being bored is a good and healthy thing for kids. Finding activities that are entertaining that don't include the screen, you know? And so he did. He actually started having more fun. Maybe a month or two into the punishment, he said, Mom, I'm actually having more fun with my friends now than I did when we were playing video games all the time. You know, they were actually playing outside with the ball. And not that he never did that before, he did. He had very limited screen time before the punishment. I can't say that he was on the screen all the time. At that time, he was actually only allowed 20 minutes a day of screen time during the school year, and then this was in the summer. So in the summer, we allowed 1 hour in the morning and then 1 hour in the evening. So he wasn't just uncontrolled on the screen all the time, but still, it took a hold of him. You know, he still developed that addiction. So now he's actually playing basketball or playing soccer, and he's talking about other things that are not video games with his friends. And he's starting to realize that it is fun to do other things. And one thing I was really concerned about is his sleepovers with cousins. Once in a while, his cousins will come over, and during the sleepover, I mean, honestly, that's all they do. They just play video games, and that's a lot more than 20 minutes a day, but those instances are not that frequent, so we allowed it. So now it was time for another sleepover, and I was concerned, what are they going to do? I knew my kids would be okay, but I thought the cousins would have a hard time with it because they have more or less unrestricted screen time, you know, and they're also used to playing video games when they hang out together. So I thought they wouldn't have a good time, or I was just concerned. While it was so much fun, they were playing hide and seek. They were playing hide and seek in the dark with flashlights. We were involved with them and playing. They were playing with their dog. They were going outside on a walk. It was a blast. And then it was his cousin's turn to host a sleepover, and they're not punished. They can, you know, do whatever at home. And one boy actually asked his mom, can we have a screen-free sleepover? Because this is so much fun. And so it's just been such a joy to see how well he did. So after the 3 weeks of like full punishment, then we allowed until the end of the year, he was allowed to be present in the room. Like if his sister was watching something or if we were watching something, he could be around us. He didn't necessarily have to leave the room, but he couldn't play any video games, and he couldn't like on his own, you know, behalf just go and turn something on because he wanted to watch something. But 5 months turned into 7 months because any time during that time that he wouldn't listen or do something that we told him to do or disobeyed in any way, we added a week to his punishment. So it turned into 7 months. Right now, it's been about a month and a half since he is no longer grounded, and he does have access to, you know, watching TV and playing video games. The only thing we're doing differently now, video games are now only allowed on the weekends. I was concerned about the transition because I don't want him to just fall back into this addiction. So I want to limit it in some way, but at the same time, give him a little bit of freedom. So weekends he's allowed, and then on the weekdays he can watch some TV. But honestly, he's so busy with sports and homework, there's not even that much time for TV. So maybe he'll get like 10, 20 minutes in, and that's about it. But one thing that was interesting that I noticed, since his punishment was over, we took a long road trip to Florida, right? Driving from our home in Chicago to Florida. So that's full 2 days of driving. Usually on road trips, what we do is we allow 1 hour on, 1 hour off with screen time just for their entertainment, but so they're not doing it all the time. And normally, excuse me, when we do have like the off time, He's counting down the minutes, how much longer can I have screen time now, and there's just constant, like, until the next time he can have screen. Well, this time around, yeah, he asked for it, but we went way over an hour. He would go for
Yeah.
2 hours, 2.5 hours, taking a nap, talking with his sister, listening to music. He wasn't so addicted to let me just get through this hour so I can have an extra hour to play. He was just entertained doing other things and perfectly content. And so I wasn't so strict. Like, yeah, it would be an hour, but if he went for an hour 15 or an hour 30, I wasn't so concerned or so strict because I could tell that he was okay without it. He could go for another 2.5 without it. So that was really neat for me to tell that change. And also just day to day, he's not, even though he's back to having the screen time, he's not really talking about it a whole lot. He's not talking about video gaming or anything like that. And he'll bring it up once in a while, but it's not the topic of his conversations and everything that he does. So I feel like the addiction was really broken. And now he seems to have a healthy relationship with video games and just watching TV.
And to clarify, I had a question. This is the first time you guys did this road trip since he had this like punishment, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so that's why you know. Yeah, it's so I'm so proud of him. And your daughter, you were saying because I was concerned for her too, and you said she was never always that interested in screen time or like video games or films and TV and stuff. Have you noticed that she has followed her brother's lead and even less interested in screen time or made no difference with her?
I feel like it didn't really make a difference for her. She can have a little bit of video games or a little bit of screen time, but then she gets bored and she wants to do something else. She actually prefers playing far more than playing video games. So it hasn't really been an issue with her. It's more so my son, but now he seems to be doing a lot better.
And because we're living in like the Midwest, so winters can be really brutal and you can't necessarily play outside for long periods of the year. What kind of games do they like to play that you kind because people are forgetting like is it board games, is it with dolls, is it with what is it coloring, what is it that they like to do because they're getting older so it gets a
Mhm.
little harder to think of things that kids like to do.
Sure. So just for perspective, my daughter is 8, about to turn, excuse me, 9 in a couple weeks, and my son just turned 12, so he was 11 going through this whole experience. So in the winter, yes, board games, absolutely. Hide and seek, playing with the dog, going outside for a walk, even if it's cold outside, just bundle up and go. Playing basketball, playing soccer, just playing with the ball, playing in the snow, going sledding. There's really, you're right. People forget, I forget,
Yeah.
because screen time is just so easy and convenient entertainment. But there's so many other things that we can do to be entertained. Reading books. So for my daughter, she likes to read a lot. So she'll read, she'll play dolls, she'll play with her friends. We try to invite their friends over as frequently as we can. I think, well, one, it's kind of easier on me because then I don't have to entertain them. Their kids can entertain them. So we are very intentional about having their friends over, inviting, throwing parties for them, just playing foosball or playing in the basement, playing pool, things like that. And then for my son, not so much with toys anymore,
Mm.
but board games. He likes to talk. We've had a lot more conversations just as family.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about how's your day going? What are you concerned about? How's school? Tell me about your friends. Sometimes he will just ask me, Mom, can we just sit here and talk? Can you talk to me? And he loves it. So things like that, just better connection.
Yeah. I remember when it was midway through the first 5 months,
Mhm.
and you were saying that your mom, so his grandmother, because they get to spend time with the grandparents every weekend,
Hmm. Right.
she had noticed that your son would be able to have long conversations about really different topics. One was like about classical composers or something like that.
Yeah.
And she was loving it. You know, you don't really hear that these days. And I know my time, every time I'm particularly with your son, he always wanted to talk to me about Roblox. And for a long time, I kept thinking he was saying road blocks. And then finally, him and his friends spelled it out for me. And I'm like, you're making this up. That's not a word. And they're like, that's the company. Roblox or something. And I went, what? That's what you've been telling me? So, but there was always that one kind of like that one thought.
Yeah.
And now hearing that he would talk about classical musicians or all sorts of different things is a wonderful thing. I was always a nerd. I would just like sort of read books, or I remember when I babysat, I would take the kids' toys and like kind of put it around the house, and I'd be like, we're gonna play sort of like it was like a movie that I had watched, like, and I'd say, oh no, have you seen Teddy Bear? We have to go find it, and like pretend that we were on a mission, like a Mission Impossible. But it's like going from the living room to their bedroom.
Right.
Or lava. Do you remember that game where you have to put like pillows on the floor?
Floor is
Like that's so
lava,
much
yeah.
fun. Yeah, the floor is lava and stuff. People forget all these things. Like you don't need a lot of stuff. And or my favorite is like where you color the paper all sorts of different colors, then you color it all black, and then you take like a quarter or something, and then you scratch out something and you make a design and it's all pretty. You know, that's like another thing I used to do when I would babysit with kids so that it would be not screen based.
Right. And another thing that my son did a whole lot more of is playing piano.
Oh,
We
yeah.
pay for his piano lessons, and yeah, he practices and he enjoys it. And I think personally he's naturally gifted towards music. But when he's busy with screen time or video games, that's not exactly what he wants to do. He wants to go play video games. But now that he couldn't, actually, back to your question about what do you do in the winter, he had played so much piano. And not just practicing what his teacher had assigned him, but he would look up songs on his own and learn them and memorize them. And it was like a whole new passion. And he likes it normally, but just not to this extent. But now that he had free time, he played a whole lot of piano.
Yeah. So I wanted to share a couple of highlights, top solutions that were in the anxious generation. And I wanted to hear from a parent what your thoughts are, because you haven't read the book, have you?
No.
Okay. So it's a good book. He advises a couple of things. So one is we'll go by chronological order of like a child. So the book advises when a child is born up until 18 months of age to limit the screen time to only when you want to video chat with a loved one. So if like a grandparent is not in the neighborhood, they're in a different country, that's when you introduce the screen to say, look, baby, like that's grandma and that's grandpa. Otherwise, you really don't need to put the screen in front of them. Right. Then at 18 to 24 months, the screen time should be limited to a supervised educational program. Right. And then 2 to 5 years old, limit it to non-educational screen time, about 1 hour per weekday. And then he said up to 3 hours on the weekend. Thoughts?
Quite a bit.
That's a bit. Yeah. 6 and older. So this is like around your daughter's age we're getting to. Limit the activities that include the screen, and all over the board, no screen time during family meals or outings. So if you guys go for, I was going to say the movies. That defeats the purpose. Like like a nice
Out to
dinner
eat
out or
or
going
to the park.
shopping or something. Yeah. And then no, this is a huge one, no screens as pacifiers, babysitters, or to stop tantrums. The tantrums, I've noticed a lot of people, even in busy restaurants. And I remember when my parents were telling me when I would have a tantrum, this was before screens in the palm of your hand, like a
Hmm.
smartphone. They said, you had a tantrum, we took you outside. We had
Yeah.
to, like, one of us had to go outside with you and wait until you ended your tantrum. That way, you didn't disrupt everyone else at the restaurant and you got it out of your system. But
Hmm.
every time people are like, it's just easier this way. I'm like, what did you think your parents did or your grandparents did with their kids? Like,
Hmm.
kids have been having tantrums
Right.
for the beginning of humankind. So we had to figure out how to teach the kids you can't just start being difficult and then if you just do this. And
Hmm.
then the fact that they become so quiet and zombie like,
Yep.
that's not concerning to you? So he was like, don't do it. And then also, a huge thing is turn off the screen and remove them from the bedroom 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime
Hmm.
and learn about and use parental control. A lot of parents don't really realize just what the parental control options
Right.
are. But I know that a couple of people know. I had situations where I was babysitting and that the kids were able to read off of the Kindle, but off
Mm.
of the smartphone app or
Hmm.
something. And I wasn't specialized in any of it or anything like that, but still they were saying, if anything, invest in the actual Kindle because that doesn't really have, or like those old school ones where it doesn't have access to the internet,
Right.
right? So that they can at least, if you're
Yeah.
worried that they can't see well or something, so the kids can still read right before
Hmm.
bedtime, but really invest in the physical book and a good lamp or something so
Right.
that they have those healthier ways. And all sorts of studies have shown when they don't have, or like an alarm clock that's like a digital or analog
Hmm.
clock has helped so many people because I know I'm addicted to my phone.
Hmm.
I have terrible memory. So I always get worried that if I remember something to do, I need to make a note of it. And I freak out if I don't have my phone with
Right.
me because then I
Yeah.
will forget it.
Well, I think that's the challenge with parents and parenting their children. We can have all these studies and, proof that this is what's best for our children's development, but how can we implement that if parents come home and watch TV all day
Yeah, they notice this.
or on their phone all day? You can't tell the child, no, you can't watch TV if you're watching TV all day. And also, you mentioned the book talked about no screen time at all up to the age of 18 months or
Hmm.
limiting it to just social interactions. Well, I think we forget that us watching TV and kids just walking around in the background and maybe playing with toys, but us being glued to that TV, that's still screen time for them. I know I struggled with that when my kids were little. I knew that screen time isn't good for them, but at the same time, this is my downtime and I want to
Yeah.
watch TV and it looks like they're just playing, but they're playing right in front of that screen. So they're still getting that screen time. And I remember when my son was a toddler, I would have a friend come over on a weekly basis to catch up and to keep him entertained. For that time, I would allow for him to watch something on the tablet.
Hmm.
And he would be moody and he would have tantrums once in a while, but it seemed like just regular toddler behavior. He was around that age, probably 18 months, not even 2 years yet. And then I decided to cut that out and not allow any tablet time. And my friend made an observation saying he is so much more calm and he is finding ways to entertain himself so much better. She told me that before I had told her that I decided to take away the tablet. And she was right. His mood was better, his attention span was better, and less tantrums. It really is correlated. It makes a huge difference.
Why did you decide to take away the tablet?
I think from just reading things
Okay.
and reading studies that it's not good for them, especially when they're so little before the age of 2. And I think I use the tablet as that pacifier when I had company, so I don't have to deal with the tantrums and I can talk to
Exactly.
my friend. So, it was just easier, and that's what a lot of us parents do. But after reading some articles of how it's not good, I decided to take it away, and it made a difference.
I wanted to go over when they get older up to high school. But
Hmm.
really quickly, one of the things in this book and a couple other studies had shown that more and more evidence is showing that even with all this technology use, there has not been enough studies to prove that all of it has even helped with grades. So the argument that like, oh, now we have access to information so we can help with grades. So like theoretically, yes, but we're making these studies and it's showing that it hasn't actually helped with higher grades because of access to the internet or to technology and stuff. So they're like, but actually when we limit it to them, particularly in school, and take away their smartphones, their grades go up when they don't have
For
their
sure.
smartphone.
Even on the school iPads, there are
Mm,
games. And what a lot of teachers will do, they will say, when you're done with an assignment, you can have some free time. And if you want to play a game, you can play a game. So these kids are not mature enough to self-regulate and really say, I'm going to do my best in the assignment. And then if I have time, I'll play. No, they want to get through it as fast as
that's
possible
true.
so they can have time to play the game.
We didn't have that option. I remember they're like, if you finish, go back and check your work.
Exactly.
Right. And then if you're done, hand it in and get a head start on your homework or something.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
those were our options. Why can't we
Yeah.
just do that? But you have a very good point. If they say if you're done, you can play a game. Of course, the kids are like, oh, if I finish this, I can easily play for 45 minutes or whatever. If I get this done in 5 minutes, I get 45 minutes or whatever it is. Of that,
Yep.
yeah.
And
Why
then
would
another thing with the school assignments, a lot of times their schoolwork will be on the school iPad. And so what kids figure out is how to split the screen. So they'll have assignment pulled up and it appears as they're working on it, but really they'll be playing a game. I know
that's a
my
good
son
point.
has done it. I know the teachers have complained. Like my son's teachers have told me about my own son, but then also saying it's an issue in the classroom that they've caught kids doing that. But I mean, yes, we need to discipline our kids and teach them that's not okay. But at the same time, at this age, I feel like they're not mature enough to self-regulate. It's a temptation that's right in front of them. If it
Yeah.
was not there, it would be a lot simpler, but it's right there all the time when they're doing homework, when they're doing schoolwork. It's one thing playing video games at home when your parents allow you, but that's a whole other thing when you have an educational device that you have to carry with you everywhere you go
And it
to
has it.
participate in school, and it has games on it.
I'm siding on the kids, honestly. Yes. So this is something that was a lot of the book talks about them when they were in like high school and stuff like that. One of the things is and it's around your son's age, is when kids start getting smartphones. And Jonathan Haidt really recommends that the school and the parents, they really come together and make a pledge and sign it and take it seriously that kids should not get the smartphone until they get to high school. So eighth grade, not sixth grade.
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to get a phone, get them a very simple phone that does not get access to the internet. The one
Mm-hmm.
that can call 911 and mom and dad
Mm-hmm.
or their friend or something like that and maybe
Mm-hmm.
text messaging. But it's that access to the internet that you can download the games, that you can go online, that you can access pornography, that you can access the news, that all this is how we get the anxiety up.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, that's my recommendation. Right before your son was kind of punished, you guys were going to give him a device, like his own phone. Was it a smartphone?
It was a smartphone. It was my old phone that barely worked and was extremely slow. I got myself a new phone and we gave him my phone. He still has it. He's not allowed to have any games on it. He's not allowed to go on the internet. The only actually three apps that he's allowed to go on is Spotify, which is monitored by us. And, he has his own playlist and things like that. The weather app, and Duolingo. So
Okay.
those are the only apps that he's allowed to have. Otherwise, it's just for calling and texting and for me to be able to get a hold of him and him texting his friends. We constantly monitor it. I have free access to his phone. I
Mm,
read through all of his text messages. There's no such a thing. This is my phone. It's my privacy. He's too young for that. I don't believe there's such a thing as privacy at the age of 12 and
yeah.
for a long time after that. So we really monitor everything that goes on. I There are phones like Bark Phone and other phones that have a lot of parental controls and GPS and things like that, and
Hmm.
I think those are all wonderful options. I haven't had any issues with him having a regular smartphone at this time. He's not carrying it with him, like looking at it all the time. He might have it with him if he goes out so I can reach him, but otherwise, unless he gets a text message or if he gets a phone call, then he picks it up. Otherwise, is just sitting on the counter or sitting on the table, and he's not messing around with it or anything like that. So we haven't had any issues, but I am very intentional about checking him all the time and checking his phone and who he's talking with and what they're talking about and things like that. One can argue that kids can delete, history and delete
Mm.
conversations and things like that. And yes, I'm aware that that is a risk. Um, I'm comfortable with the boundaries that we have at this point, but I do know also, as I said, there are other phones out there with greater parental controls and things like that that are more safe, probably.
Yeah, this is something that they were saying not only when smartphones really became a thing around 2012,
Mm-hmm.
and they said not only did children and minors' anxiety went up, so did adults, particularly parents' anxiety went up because of the GPS system. So parents were able to know exactly where their kids were at all times. And they would be constantly checking, where is my kid? They should be in school. But did they play hooky? Did they do this? Or, okay, I'm at work and now those kids are out of school. Are they going straight home or are they not? If
Mm-hmm.
they take a wrong turn, the parents would immediately call them and like, why are you at such and
Mm-hmm.
such place? Where is that? And they're like, I was gonna go get like an ice cream. Sorry. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, so this is why it's also anxiety has gone up so much. And also how these kids have not been able to be very independent. They don't know how to even handle. There was like an example of like they don't really know how to use like utensils like a fork and a knife. Everything has been done for them. You
Mm-hmm.
get so much anxiety as a parent. What if they cut themselves? Okay, well then they get a band-aid, kind of thing. Or that particularly go to the grocery store and go get me some salt, I forgot it, and we need seasoning or something like that.
Right.
People are not used to seeing children without a guardian near them
Mm-hmm.
and not having a device with them. They're like, but they
Mm-hmm.
need to be aware of their surroundings. Have you noticed this person around the neighborhood before? No. Well, keep an eye on, are they
Mm-hmm.
following you? Are they not? All that. You should know the direction to the grocery store. You and your parents have gone all this time.
Mm-hmm.
Send your kid to go pick up that seasoning. Give them, like, rely on them more so that they feel important. Otherwise, they're going to get lazy because they're like, you don't want me to do anything but just sit here and like have my phone ready with me. And you've given me a smartphone. I have my Roblox or whatever app it is. So it's not necessarily the kid's fault. And it's, of course, a parent wants to worry. And so there was a child psychologist that he quotes, and they said the cure for parent anxiety is exposure. Just as much as it is good for a kid to be exposed to no technology and like go play outside, you as a parent should be exposed to let them go outside, let them go for a walk without the technology and
Mhm.
let them do all of this stuff. Or, like, as you said, sure, he could easily might be deleting some conversations, knowing that mom and dad have access to my phone. But there's a trust. And if we don't have that trust, we have to start somewhere. I have to expose myself to the fact that my kid might be doing something, or like his friends
Mhm.
like, don't tell your parents. Okay, I'll delete this, or some, we don't know. I was a
Mhm.
kid. We probably did these kinds of things for our friends and stuff, but ultimately we were good kids. We really didn't do
Mhm.
anything bad. So chances are your kid isn't really doing anything bad, but it is that exposure and testing it out, really.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And they said no smartphones before high school, and telling the school and the governments to change the law so that when they get to school, even with their phones, that is not even a smartphone, that it should be left in the locker. So when they're in the classroom, no device is allowed.
So in our school, we're fortunate. That's exactly the
That's
expectation.
great.
Yes. But I know in a lot of other
I
schools,
don't.
they have it on them.
Yeah, and there was this argument. They're like, but what if something happens, like a school shooting or another terrorist attack or something like that? And the writer goes, I understand. I raised my children in New York City. Here's the thing: if a school shooting happens, it's much more important that your child takes cover, is aware of where they are, keeps quiet, versus being distracted to text or call their mom and dad, hey, I'm okay. And bam, the shooter now knows where your kid is because
Right.
they weren't paying attention. Put the phone away. And I was like,
Yep.
oh yeah, that's a very good point. We don't really think about it though.
Yep.
And because people are like, I need to be in contact with you at all times. Not necessarily. This is
Mhm.
one of those instances where they really have to pay attention to find safety, and you
Right.
just have to wait. So that was one thing. And then finally, um, I highly agree with this. Currently, the law, particularly in the United States, but majority of the planet, from my understanding, is um, kids can have their own profiles on social media, particularly online, when they are at the age of 13 and
Mhm.
higher.
Mhm.
This was established in the 90s, and he goes over this case. And the only reason why it became 13 was that it was just a way to, there were no studies done, there was no reasoning. It was just a bunch of politicians arguing with these businesses, and they're like, listen, let's just go for a compromise. Someone wanted it as young as 9, some people wanted it at 18. So they're like, let's just make it 13. And they're like, all right.
Mhm.
There was no rhyme or reason for why
Mhm.
13.
Mhm.
But that was the 90s. Now that we have so many ways that a kid can have access to some sort of profile, and we now know that it has caused anxiety, body dysmorphia, depression, all sorts of different things. He says, I highly recommend we change that legal limit to 16 years old.
Mhm.
18 is not realistic, but 16, those 3 years, a 16-year-old
Mhm.
is far more advanced in critical thinking and just education and all sorts of stuff than a 13-year-old. 13 is way
Mhm.
too young. I completely 100% agree with them.
Mhm.
Do you have thoughts on that?
I agree. We have let our son post like a video or two on YouTube, but our rule is you do not use your name, you do not use your age, you do not use your face, you do not
Mm-hmm.
use your voice. So, he's made some videos just like on the laptop. He recorded himself playing video games or, things like that. He put some lyrics over a song and like put a background to it. So that's the extent of what he did. And to him, that still gives him the satisfaction of, oh, I'm YouTubing, but in reality, none of his information is used, his face is not used, and, things like that. So we feel comfortable with that extent. But outside of that, I completely agree.
Yeah. And we're all learning. I went to a conference, and this social media guru, like manager guru, He was like, as soon as you thought, he's like, social media is so new still. It's barely really like 15, 20 years old. And just as you think you figured it out, they changed the rules.
Mm.
It used like, Twitter used to be only 120 characters. Now then it was 150. Then it becomes X. And then they're like, oh, you can have as many characters, but you have to pay for it. And then you have to. What? Like we're all so new to it. So when it comes to the kids, we really don't know what is great about it and not. But we also need to really pay attention to how are we about it. So it is something that why I wanted to go and study it. And
Mm-hmm.
I do know that I need to work on it, especially when I have kids of my own. I really want to follow these where I was like, yeah, you don't get the screen time. And to your point, when they're up to 18 months, I need to make sure that I'm not watching TV in the background because that's what I kind of do. But if I have a 5 month old, it's now their background,
Right.
right? That's not healthy either. So,
Yeah.
and kids absorb everything. They're sponges.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's really interesting. I'm really proud of you. And I was so interested, and it's so fascinating to hear it from a parent's point of view. And when I brought this up with other people, they're like, she did what? It's working? And I'm like, yeah, and it actually isn't that difficult.
It's really not. Yeah. And then another thing that I've recently learned that I never kept in mind. So I mentioned that previously I would allow 20 minutes of video games, right? Well, through that, he still developed an addiction. And then I listened to I believe it was a psychologist that did a podcast. And she talked about if a child is playing a game and they're like at the peak of like that battle or whatever resolution that needs to happen in the video game, you cannot cut it off in the middle of it because that's exactly what's developing that addiction. If you're going to allow them to play the video game, they need to be able to have that high and then come back to the low to finish it. And then that's when you cut it off. And so I realized within those 20 minutes, whatever he was playing, he was always complaining, Mom, you don't even let me finish the battle that I'm fighting. Can I at least finish the round? And sometimes I would let him, other times I wouldn't. But she was saying exactly that kind of thing is what develops an addiction. It's different when you're having so much fun outside and are in the middle of a really fun game and your mom calls you back inside. You can go back outside and then pick it up where you left it off. It doesn't have the same effect on your brain as video games specifically when you're cut off at that peak or before you were able to come back down from that peak, then it's not good for your brain and it develops an addiction. So that was very interesting for me to learn.
That it's very much video games or other forms of storytelling, right? And it's that cliffhanger, right?
Mm-hmm.
That series do so that they keep
Right.
you wanting to show up every week or, in streaming, keep saying, yes, I want to watch the next episode. Yes, I want to.
Exactly.
Yeah, very good
Yeah.
point.
So if you don't finish, then you're like thinking, when can I go back and play it again so then I can finish? Whereas if you went up and came back down, then you feel that at least feeling of satisfaction that, okay, I played it, I'm okay now, I can go do something else. So my thought of limiting screen time, though may be good, you still have to do it wisely and not limit it too much and let them finish what they started if you are going the route of allowing them to play video games.
Yeah. Great point. Well, thank you so much, Kate. Is there anything else that we haven't really touched on?
Oh, I think we touched on all the big topics. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And
All
thanks
right.
everyone for listening. Hopefully we gave you guys ideas. And yeah,
Yep.
I'm going to go color again.